fruit or vegetable? What is the difference?
Welcome to Feed Your Brain.
Let's start with the definitions of what a fruit is and what a vegetable is. A fruit is the edible part that has developed from a flower. And a fruit contains one or more seeds. A vegetable is any part of a plant that's used for food. Roots, tubers, stems, leaves, and yes, even the fruit, are all considered vegetables. The difference between a fruit and a vegetable has nothing to do with whether or not it tastes sweet. Let's start with an apple, and we'll ask 3 questions to see if it's a fruit or a vegetable. First, is it from any part of a plant that's used for food? Yes. Second, is the edible part developed from a flower? Yes. And the third question is, does an apple contain one or more seeds? And the answer is, yes. In the spring, beautiful flowers grow all over the apple tree. Look how beautiful this apple orchard is. Here is an apple tree blossom. And here are apples growing on tree branches. Each of these apples is where a flower used to be. And here are the seeds inside an apple. So is an apple a fruit or a vegetable? An apple is a fruit. How about an orange? Is an orange any part of a plant that's used for food? Yes. Is an orange the edible part that was developed from a flower? Here is an orange tree blossom, and here is an orange tree, so the answer is yes. Does an orange contain one or more seeds? Here is an orange slice, and look at all of those seeds. So that answer is yes. So is an orange a fruit or a vegetable? An orange is a fruit. Great job. How about a tomato? Is a tomato a fruit or a vegetable? Is the tomato any part of a plant that's used for food? Yes. Is a tomato the edible part that's been developed from a flower? Here are tomato blossoms. And here are tomatoes growing on a vine. So yes, the tomato developed from a flower. Does a tomato contain one or more seeds? Here's a slice of tomato. And here are a lot of seeds. So yes, the tomato contains one or more seeds. So is the tomato a fruit or a vegetable? The tomato is a fruit. But life is not quite as simple as saying that tomatoes are fruit, and that's the final decision. Saying that tomatoes are fruit is what you call the botanical definition, which is what a botanist would call it. A botanist is a scientist who studies plants. But other people are involved a lot with tomatoes, not just a botanist. There are farmers, shippers, and importers of tomatoes who are regularly involved with tomatoes who would want tomatoes to be called vegetables. And indeed, in 1893, the United States Supreme Court declared that tomatoes are a vegetable because of the way tomatoes are consumed, and because tomato importers were trying to label their tomato shipments fruit so that they would not pay the tariffs or taxes on importing vegetables. So you would say that there is the botanical definition that states that tomatoes are fruit. And then you would say that there is the legal definition that states that tomatoes are a vegetable. See, life is always complicated. How about a carrot? Is it a fruit or a vegetable? The first question is easy to answer. Is the carrot a part of a plant that's used for food? Yes, of course. We love carrots. The second question then is a carrot the edible part developed from a flower? Well, a carrot grows in the soil and is actually the root of the plant. So the answer is no, a carrot does not develop directly from a flower. The flowers on a carrot plant grow out the top of the plant, and once pollinated, the flowers produce the seeds, but no fruit from the flowers is developed. So then the third question is, does a carrot contain one or more seeds? And any way you cut a carrot, you'll never find seeds inside, so the answer to this third question is no, a carrot does not contain one or more seeds. So is a carrot a fruit or a vegetable? A carrot is a vegetable. So then how about potatoes? Are potatoes a fruit or a vegetable? Let's look at the 3 main questions. Is the potato any part of a plant that's used for food? Yes, the potato is part of a plant that's used for food. And the second question. Is the potato an edible part developed from a flower? Let's look closer at this question. Here is the potato plant. Below the ground here are 4 potatoes. You might hear that potatoes are roots. But these black lines are the roots. So then what are these beige lines called that connect the potatoes to the main plant stem? These lines are called the stolons. Stolons are different than roots. Stolons connect the potatoes to the main plant stem. So then what is a potato called if it's not a root? A potato is called a tuber. Tubers are enlarged structures used as storage for nutrients to help the plant survive in the winter or during dry months, by providing energy and nutrients to be able to regrow in the next growing season. Let's look closer at this potato plant. There's some interesting things going on here. Did you know that the potato plant also makes fruit? Yes, potato plants produce fruit. But stay away from this fruit. This fruit is toxic. We never want to eat or touch this fruit. Toxic means it will harm you. All kids and pets should stay completely away from any potato fruit. And here are the flowers on this potato plant. After the flowers are pollinated, they produce the fruit, but again this fruit is toxic and should be avoided. The fruit is still important to growing potatoes, because inside the fruit are what? Inside the fruit are the seeds, to be able to grow more plants from. Now that we know more about the potato plant, let's look at the second question again. Is the potato the edible part developed from a flower? The answer is no, the potato is not from a flower. The potato grows underground and is considered a tuber. And how about the third question, does the potato contain one or more seeds? No, the potato does not contain any seeds inside. From French fries to potato chips, you'll never find a seed inside of a potato. Therefore, a potato is considered a vegetable. How about broccoli? Is broccoli a fruit or a vegetable? Is broccoli any part of a plant that's used for food? Yes, broccoli is from a plant that is used for food. Is broccoli the edible part developed from a flower? Let's look at a photo of the broccoli plant. This is a developing broccoli plant. This top part are the growing florets. And here around the sides are the leaves. Notice how the entire plant looks. When you pick out broccoli at the store to buy, you are selecting from this top part here, which are the florets, and it might include this part here, the stalk. But you don't buy the leaves. And what you are buying is the top part of the entire plant. And what's interesting about the florets is that they are considered the flower of the plant. But do pollinators feed from nectar on this part of the plant? Well, after the florets develop, then these bright-colored smaller flowers grow, and this is where the pollinators feed from, and where the seeds then grow after pollination, but these bright flowers are not eaten. So now on to question number 2. Is broccoli developed from a flower? No, broccoli does not grow out from a fertilized ovary within a flower. Broccoli is considered the flower. And question number 3. Does broccoli contain one or more seeds? No, broccoli does not contain any seeds. So is broccoli a fruit or a vegetable? Broccoli is a vegetable. How about lettuce? Is lettuce a fruit or a vegetable? Let's go through the questions to find out. Is lettuce any part of a plant that's used for food? Yes, definitely. Is lettuce the edible part developed from a flower? Let's look at this question closer. This is how lettuce grows in the ground. It's just a leafy plant with roots. You cut the roots off, and you have a head of lettuce. But let the lettuce grow longer, and guess what happens? The head of lettuce keeps growing taller and taller and taller. And this of course has a name. This is called bolting. And then guess what grows out of the top? Stems with flowers. So here are the flowers. You just don't see any of this top part when shopping for lettuce at the grocery store. And then the flowers are pollinated where the ovules then turn into seeds. So the answer to this question is no, lettuce is not the edible part developed from a flower. Lettuce leaves grow first, before the flowers begin to grow, and it's the lettuce leaves that you eat. So the third question is, does lettuce contain one or more seeds? And the answer is, no, lettuce leaves, the part that you eat, does not contain any seeds in it. So is lettuce a fruit or a vegetable? Lettuce, therefore, is a vegetable. So how about celery? Do you like celery? Is celery any part of a plant that's used for food? Yes, it certainly is. Is celery the edible part developed from a flower? What we call celery is this part here, and this is called the stalk of the celery plant. The leaves here, you do not eat, and the base here, you do not eat, but the stalk you do eat. You chop it up and put it into salads or cook with it. So the stalks of celery that we eat are not part of the flower. The flowers of the celery plant will grow up on top above the leaves if left longer in the ground. But the celery we buy at the grocery store has been pulled up from the ground before the flowers have grown on top, so we never see the flowers of the celery plant. And here is how celery grows in the ground. So does the celery stalk contain one or more seeds inside? No, it does not. So then is celery a fruit or a vegetable? Celery is, therefore, a vegetable. How about an onion? Is an onion any part of a plant that's used for food? Yes, it is. Grilled onions are yummy to cook with, and red onions are yummy chopped up in a salad. Is an onion the edible part developed from a flower? Let's look at how an onion grows. Here is the onion growing in the ground. The onion part that we eat is called the bulb of the plant. And the onion bulb sits right at the ground level. And the roots grow just below the bulb. And out the top are the leaves. And if left long enough in the soil, flowers will blossom on the top to attract pollinators. So as you can see in this illustration, the onion part that we eat is the bulb, and above the bulb is where the leaves grow, and then later on the flowers grow. So the answer is no, onions are not the edible part developed from a flower. So then do onions contain one or more seeds? And that answer is, no, onions do not contain any seeds, because the onion bulbs that we eat do not grow out of the flower part of the plant. Therefore, an onion is a vegetable. How about legumes? Wait, first, what are legumes? Legumes are a pod with a seed in it, grown from a flower, and we eat the seed. You might not be familiar with the description of legumes, but maybe you are familiar with green peas? Green peas are legumes. Green peas are the seeds that grow inside a pod, and the pod is grown from a fertilized flower. So when we eat green peas, we are eating the seeds of the plant. This is the same thing with kidney beans. Kidney beans are the seeds of the plant that are grown in pods, and are the result of a fertilized flower. And this is the same thing with chickpeas, or garbanzo beans. And the same with soybeans, and the same with lima beans. All beans are legumes, because all beans are the seeds that are grown inside pods, and the pods grow from the fertilized flower. Here is a typical bean plant. Here are the roots. Here is the stem, and here are the leaves. Up here are the flowers, and when pollinators pollinate these flowers, these bean pods develop, with the beans, or peas, inside. There is a legume that is completely unique from any of the others, and it has the word nut in it, but it's not a nut, so you wouldn't think of it as a legume. Can you guess what I'm talking about? It's the peanut. Growth of the peanut is very interesting. It's a legume because it is a pod with seeds in it, and it's grown from a flower, and we eat the seed. Let's look at an illustration of a peanut plant. Peanuts are very unique, because their pods do not stay attached at the stem like bean pods. Once the peanut flower becomes fertilized, a peg is formed attached to the developing peanut pod. The peg is this long thin tendril. And then the peg grows down towards the ground. And then the peg enters the soil, and then down in the soil, the peanuts are formed inside the hard shells. So now that we've learned all of this interesting information about legumes, let's answer the 3 questions. First, are legumes any part of a plant that's used for food? Yes, indeed. Second, are legumes the edible part developed from a flower? Yes, all legumes are developed from a flower. And third, do legumes contain one or more seeds? And that answer is, yes, legumes contain one or more seeds. Legumes are the seeds that we eat. So because all 3 answers are yes, you should be able to answer our big question. Are legumes, which are all types of beans and peanuts, fruits or vegetables? Legumes are fruits. And here again, like we mentioned with tomatoes, life is not quite as easy as labeling legumes fruit, and the debate is over. The 1893 United States Supreme Court decision that declared tomatoes a vegetable also declared beans a vegetable in the ruling. And just like the issue with tomatoes, a lot of people are involved in legumes and beans and want to have legumes or beans classified as a vegetable for trade purposes. So again, there is the botanical definition, which says legumes are fruit. And there is the legal definition, which says that beans are vegetables. And therefore, people will hold opinions for both definitions. How about an egg? Is an egg a fruit or a vegetable? Let's look at the 3 questions to find out. First, is an egg from a part of a plant that's used for food? What do you think? Where do eggs come from? Oh, that's right, eggs come from chickens. So the answer is no, eggs do not come from any plant. So eggs are neither a fruit nor a vegetable. How about the walnut? Is the walnut from any part of a plant that's used for food? Yes. Is a walnut the edible part developed from a flower? Let's take a look. Walnuts have this outer green layer on them that you don't see when you buy walnuts at the store. Then it has this hard inner shell that you are likely familiar with, and then walnuts have this inner part that you eat, and this inner soft, edible part is called, guess what? This inner edible soft part is called the seed. And this seed has formed from a pollinated flower on the walnut tree. So the answer is yes, a walnut is the edible part developed from a flower. And the 3rd question is, does the walnut contain one or more seeds? Well, the walnut is the seed, so the answer is yes, the walnut does contain one seed, because it is the seed of the walnut tree. This is what the walnut seed looks like hanging on the walnut tree. Covered in the green softer outer covering, you would call this the ripened fruit, with the entire walnut inside. And here is the walnut tree. So the final question is a walnut a fruit or a vegetable? Well, now we know that the walnut is indeed a fruit. What about wheat? More specifically, what about wheat grains? Wheat grains come from inside the wheat husk, from here. When you remove the chaff, or the outer parts, you get the remaining wheat grains, which are used for food. So is the wheat grain a fruit or a vegetable? Let's look at the 3 questions to find out. First, is wheat grain any part of a plant that's used for food? Yes. Second, is wheat grain the edible part that was developed from a flower? Let's take a closer look. Here is a photo of a stalk of wheat, which is still green. And what else do you see on this head of wheat? You see all of these tiny yellow flowers. And after each flower is pollinated, a seed grows there. And the seed is the wheat grain that is used for things such as bread. So is a wheat grain the edible part that was developed from a flower? As we just learned, yes, it is. So then does a wheat grain contain one or more seeds? Well, the wheat grain is the seed, so that answer is yes. With all 3 questions being answered yes, can you tell now if a wheat grain is a fruit or a vegetable? A wheat grain is a fruit. Good job. How about a pumpkin? Is a pumpkin a fruit or a vegetable? Let's look at the 3 questions. Is a pumpkin any part of a plant that's used for food? Yes, it is. Second, is a pumpkin the edible part developed from a flower? Let's look closer at this question and find out. A pumpkin grows on a vine, like You see here. And here is a pumpkin growing on a vine. And the pumpkins are heavy, so they rest on the ground. But before the pumpkin was here attached to this vine, what was here first? A flower was here first. This is the female pumpkin blossom. So once this flower becomes pollinated with pollen from another flower, it develops the growth of the pumpkin. So that would make the pumpkin a fruit. And does the pumpkin contain one or more seeds? If you've ever seen a pumpkin getting carved for Halloween, you've seen that the pumpkin is packed with a lot of seeds inside. So yes, a pumpkin does contain one or more seeds. So with all three questions being answered as yes, is the pumpkin considered a fruit or a vegetable? The pumpkin is considered a fruit. So who decides what is called a fruit or what is called a vegetable? We have our knowledge about the growth of plants, and what parts of the plant grow out of flowers, thanks to the hard work of botanists, who are scientists that study plants. So if something grows out of a flower and we eat it, that is called a fruit, and botanists have told us this information, so this is the botanical information. Then, as mentioned earlier, there have been Supreme Court rulings that have declared that tomatoes and beans are vegetables. So these are the legal definitions. And this involves such things as tariffs or taxes on imports of tomatoes. Because growing, shipping, and selling fruits and vegetables is big business, and there are a lot of different professionals involved, and there is a lot of money involved as well. So what is labeled a vegetable or what is labeled a fruit has big consequences. And when you eat at restaurants, you have an expectation of how food is grouped as well. Chefs will categorize fruits and vegetables based on what is commonly expected by most people. Imagine if your favorite restaurant had a menu and under the fruit section had listed beans, bread, tomatoes, and walnuts. That technically is correct, but you would think something is wrong with the menu or the head chef. This is the same thing at grocery stores. The fruits and vegetables in the produce section are organized based on what most consumers would expect to find at a grocery store. Under the fruits section, you'd find, of course, apples and oranges, but you wouldn't expect to find tomatoes, or peas, or beans, or pumpkin, or walnuts, or bread. In the vegetables section, that is easier to group, so all of these items would be expected to be grouped in the vegetables section at the grocery store. Fruit or vegetable? What is the difference? We hope you learned a lot from this video. Please hit like and subscribe. That helps a lot. Thank you for watching.
Feed your brain.